All right. Hello and welcome. My name is Ben, and this is part 11. No, hold on. Ooh. This is part 12 in a series in which we implement a DSL for UI testing in Rust. Today's video is really important. We are going to be adding a REPL. But we're going to be doing more than that. We don't simply want to add. Um, so, for those of you who don't know, REPL stands for Read, Evaluate, Print, Loop. And basically, it's this idea that rather than writing one big file with all your code and then running it, you can sort of write one line of code at a time and execute it and see the results in real time. Now, we don't want we don't simply want to do that. That's good, but we don't simply want to do that. We really want to support this concept of a REPL driven development. So the idea is you can execute a command, watch it happen in real time, and then optionally, if you think that's what you want to do next, you can add it to a file. You can just say, yeah, save that. Or if it didn't work out, you can throw it away and try something else. And the idea is that this is how you write your code. Rather than feeling like you're writing one big long program and hoping it works, you can just sort of do it piece by piece and watch it execute. I think this is a big feature for us. I think this is really a big part of what makes it feel like something that's comfortable for non-programmers. Because without it, of course, what you end up trying to do is write these big long scripts. And if every time you want to test that something's working properly, you sort of have to rerun the whole thing. So yeah, I hope you're enjoying OBS's new look. It seems like they've done a UI update. My guess is to match Windows 11, which I am not running. But yeah, I like it. I think it looks nice. So without much more commentary, we'll jump in. I just want to say one last thing, which is that I don't want you to think that we're somehow done with syntax. I know we've been doing a lot of like adding a CLI, improving our testing, and now we're doing this REPL. I don't want you to think that we're somehow done with features for the language. I think we probably have 25% of the language actually implemented. We want to add things for select elements. We want to add things for drag and drop, probably. We're going to integrate optical character recognition at some point, OCR. And we still have to make decisions around, do we want to have a concept of modules or procedures or functions or page objects? There's a lot to do with language development coming up, but it seems to make a little bit of sense to get things set up so that you can use the basic language and then add features as we go. I think the REPL actually is going to help us with adding features quite a bit because we can sort of test out in real time different combinations of commands rather than writing test cases up front. Of course, we want to have those test cases, but what we can do is sort of do exploratory testing with the REPL, and then we can record those in test cases afterwards. Okay, so yeah, let's do it. So the way I want this to work is we already have a sort of convenience function for our testing called run no log. Right? This method, run no log, is basically going to run our schnauzer UI code, but it's not going to print out the log statement at the end, and it's not going to take screenshots. And I think, well, we may want that. I think it would have made more sense to keep logging in the REPL if we had it here's my concern about logging in the REPL, is I don't want a log to be printed automatically by the interpreter when a statement is not saved. Yeah, I think we're going to go with no log for now, and we may support, right, because the idea is if you want to produce a log, you can just run the script right after you're done recording it, right? So let's try using this run no log for now. So in our CLI, we have a run file function, right? And we have a run directory function, which basically goes in search of schnauzer UI files and runs each through the run file method. Now we have this run REPL method, and this is going to be quite different. What I think I'd like it to do is, rather than doing all this directory nonsense, is actually create, basically, we may not even use the run method, right? Because we want to execute a single statement at a time. So we don't want to be closing a browser, opening it up, closing it again, right? So I think I actually want it to use interpreter. So basically what the run method does, so if we go to lib, right, this, let's start here. So let's do, sorry, that's not what I meant to do. To import. And import. Add den keyword. No. Bring me the fix. This is what happens when you name things the same as other people's traits. So we want scanner, parser. Great. And then you'll go away in a second. Yeah. And then we want interpreter, yep. Trait objects must include the den keyword. Am I bringing in a parse trait? A parser trait? Oh, I sure am, look at that. Because I'm deriving parser on clap. So let's just qualify this as schnauzer UI parser. Right? The thing here is that there's a trait called parser that I'm bringing in to derive on our CLI that comes with the clap crate. But my struct, my class for the parser is also called parser. So I have to be specific about which one I'm using. And I can't simply just pull it in up there because I already have the other one in scope. Okay. So what we want to do with the REPL is this is basically our steps for running a statement, right? And we'll just run it as like a single list, a list with a single element, right? So we have to scan it, we have to parse it, and then we have to run it through an interpreter. What I want to do instead probably is we're going to loop, right? That's pretty standard REPL behavior. And then we are going to prompt. So there's a couple ways we could do this. There is actually a crate which I think might work really well called prompt. So let's go to crates.io. prompting helper, right? Yeah, promptly. So here you go, right? You just call this prompt method and it will prompt for what you want. So let's add promptly, because I think that's going to make our code more readable. Right, and basically it's sort of giving Rust equivalents to what would be like the Python, what's it called? The Python input function. So let's do, pretty much going to be doing strings, right? So let's bring in these. And in the loop, first thing we're going to do is prompt for some code. So when we run the REPL, we're going to prompt for a schnauzer UI statement, right? Could be an if statement, could be a command statement, right? But basically just one line of schnauzer UI code. So let's do that by saying let statement prompt, and rather than doing that sort of into your name, I think I'm just going to do an arrow like that, right? Ooh. Async function run REPL. I kind of want to use question marks throughout this. So let's do async function REPL loop. And that's going to return a, let's just do a result string like that. And let's move this code in here. And then we'll say for the error is just going to be, actually let's make this a static stir. That way I just don't have to type I don't have to type to_owned all the time. And we'll say error reading in line. And then I think that should be, yeah, we'll return from that. Okay, so that's going to prompt us for our schnauzer UI statement and save it as a string. Then, well, really we can call this code. And then what we want to do is we want to scan and parse that code. And then here's the deal. Okay, so currently our interpreter takes so for our REPL, right? We want it to keep the browser open and execute statements one by one. But currently, the way the interpreter works is it takes the statements to interpret in the constructor. And that's no bueno for a REPL, because we want to construct it once, we want to construct the interpreter once and keep using it. So we have a couple options here. If we look at interpreter, we could try and move this back down, right? We could try and take statements and move it to the interpret method, right? Like we did before. But that will mess with our try again functionality. There is another option, I think, which is that rather than constructing the driver rather than constructing the web driver in the interpreter constructor and the environment in the interpreter constructor, we can pass those, we can construct them separately and pass those to the construction. This is sometimes referred to as dependency injection. The idea is, well, when it's there's sort of one more bit when you're referring to dependency injection. So usually the reason you do this is because rather than pass a specific type, what you want to do is you want to pass just something that implements a particular interface or implements a particular trait. You see that a lot in like Java. They use it in the Spring Boot framework quite often. We could do something like that. So I'm going to stop talking about it and just give this a shot. So basically what I want to do is I'm going to take a driver, but what that's going to be, I don't think driver implements clone. Let's find out if driver implements clone really quickly, but I think I'm going to give it a mutable reference to a driver. Right, so if I clone that, oh, you do implement clone. Interesting. I still think I'm going to do a reference. So rather than taking, rather than owning a WebDriver, I'm going to give it a mutable reference to a WebDriver. Oh, good Christ. Here come the lifetime specifiers. Here we go, everybody. It's actually not bad. Yep. References lifetime from a parent. What? Casing function cannot. Oh yeah, so it's saying basically I can't. Right. So if I did like this. Right, cannot, well, first of all, yeah, let's make it mutable. Right, so it's saying cannot return value referencing local variable driver. So, but just the fact that I'm trying to pass a reference, trying to own a reference to a driver, it's saying, hey, you can't create that in your constructor and then take a reference to it because it's going to be dropped by the time it gets to the end of this constructor function, basically. So I'm creating this driver here, and then I'm giving a reference to the constructor, and then as soon as this function returns, the actual object is dropped. So it's saying you can't do that. That would be what's known as a use after free. So instead, we're going to take the driver, as a constructor argument. Right, let's call that a driver. And then you can just do that. And then instead of constructing it there, we'll construct it outside of this constructor. Lifetime may not live long enough. Returning this value requires that tick A must outlive. Oh, so this function needs to be a tick A mute WebDriver. It requires that A must outlive static. Oh, is it because it's... Okay, let's think here for a minute. Let's just be thinkers. That's what you do. So how do we want to do this? How do we want to keep the same interpreter open? What if we had a method on the interpreter? So we have this interpret method that works by using self.statements. But we could instead have like a pub function pub async function interpret statement. Right, so really all this, let's look at interpret. Let's see what interpret does. It says while it's some statement equals statements.pop. So while we've got statements to interpret, it executes the statement. If it's okay, then it just keeps going. If there's an error, then it looks at the severity of that error and decides what to do, either to close the window, or if it's recoverable, it logs the message and sets had error to true. Maybe we just want to use execute statement. So execute statement here. And match on that in the REPL function. So here we could say let's have an interpreter, but we're going to give it no statements. Right? Rather, let's say scan and parse the code. So the idea here is that the code that's scanned and parsed is presumably a single statement, right? So we could do something like if statements.len is not equal to 1, then, well, no, we probably want multiple statements. But we could set, like, we want to be able to maybe have a shift enter functionality. We'll look at that in a minute, but we'll say for statement in statements. Most of the time, this will be simply one statement. Interpreter dot execute statement and then we'll dot await and then we'll map the error. This is going to be, really we don't want to exit here. Right, so if this is an error, we're actually going to want to match on that. But for now, let's just execute the statement. And then up here, we want to map error, error starting, interpreter, and or browser. Really, for this, the only way right now, what's your problem? Really the only way for this new function to fail is if the WebDriver creation fails. But we may change that later. Okay. No method named execute statement for enum result. Oh, and then we gotta propagate that. Okay. And then let's do this. Let's have a command for exiting the REPL. So I'm going to say if code equals exit, right? So you can type the word exit, which is not a command in Schnauzer UI, to exit the code, or I'm going to say if you just double tap enter. So I'm going to say or if code.trim is empty. Basically, if you just entered white space, then we should be able to exit. So I'm going to say break. Yeah. So when we break from the loop, we'd want to return okay. Yeah, and for now, let's just call REPL loop. I know I've separated these into two functions seemingly unnecessarily, but dot dot expect. Well, if I unwrap, will it print the error? Let's just unwrap for now, and then we'll do error handling in a minute. We gotta wait. Await it. Okay, great. So now let's remind ourselves of our CLI commands. Cargo run help. So we're going to have to reckon with things like commands that maybe make less sense in a REPL-driven environment. Like it doesn't really make sense to use catch error when you're doing REPL-driven development, right? It doesn't make sense to use try again in a REPL environment, you know? So we may want to add configurability. And we plan on adding anyway configurability for like which commands are available and whatnot. And we could have like some sensible defaults for the REPL. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to cargo run with a REPL flag. Okay, so here we go. The REPL is running. Okay, so you see we've got our browser to execute against, and it's displayed our little arrow, and the and the prompt library puts that semicolon or that colon there. So the idea is that we can sort of have our browser over here. Let's make that. And then we can have our terminal over here. It looks sort of weird, all smushed into VS Code, right? But we can have our terminal over here. And just for the sake of seeing things, let's exit out there. Okay, so we should hopefully type URL. We've got our test URLs up, so maybe we can go to localhost 1234. Yeah, let's go there. That does not appear to have executed the command. Interesting. Let's try URL google.com. Okay. So let's try exit. Okay, so we can exit. Exit should probably close the browser as well. Why are you not running the command? So let's take a look. If we pass in the code, it gets scanned. And then we parse the statements. Let's make sure we're getting statements to pass into the interpreter before we go dicking around and execute statement. I want you to print out statements. And in fact, I'm actually going to do, rather than have this execute, let's just print the statement we parsed, shall we? So that should launch a browser, right, for us to work in. And then let's say I run the statement URL localhost. Oh. I haven't told it what to do if a statement errors yet. Right. And so what happened here, so when I typed URL localhost 1234, I didn't have quotes around the URL, so it was looking for a variable called localhost:1234, and that that variable resolution failed because we obviously don't have a variable called that since we just started. And so since we haven't dealt with the error yet, that's why it errored. Okay, awesome. Let's take a look. Let's do this, shall we? And while we're at it, when we quit, let's call interpreter dot. So in the interpreter, we close the browser by calling self.driver.close window. Now we could do two things. I think I'm just going to make the WebDriver public. Right, for now. It's going to be the most straightforward way to do it. So I can say interpreter.driver.close window .await, and then map the error to say error closing browser window. Yeah, just like that. Cool. And then what I want to do here, we'll handle that in a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run this again so that you can see it execute some commands. And I'm just going to try to type a decent command this time. Try to type a correct command. Okay, so we're running. We have a browser to operate on, right? So I'm going to put this browser over here. I'm going to put our VS Code window over here and basically put the file tray away, put that away. So let's try typing in quotes this time. Right, so it navigated to the local host, and so you can see we're hosting this in Python right now, and it's showing us all our different like test things. I want to go to let's do the locate HTML file. So I'm going to say I'm going to say locate, and I'm looking for the text locate.html. And click it. Right, so you can see it clicked that link and it took us through to the page. So we are now doing sort of REPL based coding where we're controlling the WebDriver from the terminal with these commands. Now what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're able to record these commands as we go along if they do the thing we expect them to do. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, just to make sure things are working, I'm going to say locate by placeholder and type woohoo, right? So that the idea is that text doesn't have any special significance. It just happens to be the placeholder for that field, and hopefully the locate command will be smart enough to figure out where it needs to type into. And you can see it typed woohoo into the placeholder. We can locate it by other things, right? That's sort of what the locate text test is for, right? I can say, you can imagine if it didn't have any text in there, but we wanted to just say, hey, this is the label beside it, so obviously what you should be typing into is the text box. So we could say locate by preceding label. And then we want to type yuppers. Right, there we go, we typed yuppers. Ooh, incidentally, we didn't clear it first, right? So we need to make sure we do that. That's a good note to make. Okay, so now that we can do this, let's play around a little bit while we've got this up and running. I'm going to go to YouTube. URL youtube.com. Error response. So that tried to go to localhost. YouTube not found. That's interesting. URL https youtube.com. So that's the that must be the behavior of the navigate command in 34. Basically, if you don't give it, you can either type in a stub or you can type in the full URL, and it's sort of smart enough to know what you're going for. That's interesting. Okay, here's YouTube. It's just sort of, it's interesting to see the videos for no algorithm, because this obviously isn't signed in. It's basically like an incognito window. So the videos it shows are different than the videos it usually shows me. Let's search for something. Let's search for this channel. It probably won't show up because algorithm doesn't really value videos that have like 17 views right now. So, but we'll search for it anyway. Let's locate that text search and type implementing a DSL for UI testing in Rust. Let's see how we do. So it typed that in there. We don't have key pressed yet. Yet another feature we want. Maybe we can click. Maybe we can explore some different locators. So if we look at this, right, that element has an ID. The button has an ID. Search icon legacy. Right, great. So let's get rid of that. And let's say locate search icon legacy and click. Right, so we click that search button and you can see we made the search. And hey, look, there's my videos. Top notch. So you can see how a tester would use this to go about recording tests. Okay, let's quit playing around. Although I am very happy that these videos are showing up now. And let's do... so we already verified that typing exit would enter. Also, I think if you just hit enter on an empty line, value, oh, so the prompt, library is not going to let you hit empty. So that's where that message is coming from. Interesting. Okay, no worries. Fine with that. I think that's maybe a good idea. Don't want people accidentally exiting out of their REPL. Okay, so that's very good progress so far. Now what we want to do is we want to start building a script file based on the commands that are given. So let's do this. Let's just pass this along, this output file path along, right? And we can just call output file path. Okay, and let's do some error handling. So when we execute a statement, if it's successful, and let's clone the statement here, because we're going to use it. Let's clone the statement. If it's okay, and I don't think execute statement actually returns anything. Yeah. So if the statement goes well, then we want to prompt the user if they want to save the statement, right? So we could say We'll do basically this same thing here. But instead of that, we'll say save this statement to run context. We'll say, let's just say save this statement. But this is going to be a yes or no, actually. So the prompt library has a sort of has a method for that. So if we go to promptly, right, you can just sort of I think you can just basically say cat do bool, and the prompt function will return a boolean. I don't really want a default URL using the URL crate. That's interesting. We might use that to sort of augment our URL functionality, because we saw it navigate to that stub earlier. But let's do, yeah. Let's just say instead of looking for a string, you're looking for a boolean. And this is going to be save statement. And then we're going to say if, actually, let's inline this. Well, we can't really inline it because we want to typecast this, right? Or we want to tell the prompt function what type to return. It's a generic function. We could, but it sort of ended up looking weird. I'd rather just say if save statement, then now we want to write the statement to the running, or to the script file, sure. So let's say if let's say let output path output, we'll just overwrite it. Output, this is called shadowing, equal if let's file path equal output file path, then file path, else we kind of want to do right here, which the way we figured that out is this log path. Oh, we do that in run file. In run dir, we basically have a SUI. Let's just try doing file path as a string. Let's just try doing dot slash test dot SUI for now. Eventually we'll add a flag to the CLI to like name the test, or maybe we'll do that when we save it. I don't know, we could rename the file. You know, that's actually interesting. Sort of like we did before in the scanner, where rather than writing each line one at a time, we sort of kept a buffer and then wrote the file at the end. We could do that here, and then just at the very end of the REPL's run, we could say, do you want to save this to a file, and then ask for a file path. I think that might be the better way to do it. Yeah, I think that might be the better way to do it. So let's get rid of all this. I guess we don't have to ask for the file path because it already takes an output path parameter. We can say let script buffer equal string new, right? We need to make it mutable. And luckily for us, our statements implement display exactly how they're scanned. So we can simply write we can say script buffer dot push stir and say and formats the statement, right? Yeah. And then when we exit this loop, right? Now we do have this concept of early returns. So I don't necessarily, right, because it's totally possible that we could do an early return here and not have, not save the script buffer. So maybe what I'll do here is say, have this return the script buffer. Oh no, because we want the script buffer either way. I don't know, these aren't error closing the window, error reading in a prompt, error starting interpret. Yeah, I think those are fine actually. We may change this so that we can salvage the script buffer no matter what. But for now, we'll assume things are working properly. And we'll say if we run into an error, then we probably don't want to save an error. Let's just print line. I guess we can error print line. Statement resulted in an error, and then we can actually use that error. So yeah, or E, right? Oh, interesting. So we can do 0. That'll be the actual string message of the error. And then we can maybe prompt save anyway. It's possible you want to create a script from REPL mode that is demonstrating that something creates an error. So we can say save this statement anyway. Yep. And then if save statement, then we will push the string. Okay, and then at the end of the loop, when we break the loop, we don't simply want to return OK. Now we want to do a few prompts. We could say let save script equal prompt save this test run as schnauzer UI script. Error saving test run as a schnauzer UI script. Sure. Yeah, I'm good with all that. And then this is going to be a Boolean. The prompt library turns Boolean prompts into like a sort of yes/no, and if you give it a default, it'll do the capital Y or capital N. We'll say if save script, then let's do standard fs write to file, right? Write path and context. Great. For the path, we're going to do output path. Right? Isn't that what it's called? Output file path. Dot unwrap or else, or unwrap or, and then we want to give it dot slash test sui, right? And then the contents is going to be the script buffer. Dot expect, we can expect here. Error writing script to output file. And you need to be a string, don't you? Yep. To owned. Okay. Let's see how that goes. Let's see what we're doing here. So here's the basic concept. We run our REPL. You can see that launches this browser for us to work in. Right, and so we can do something like URL https youtube.com. So it's going to navigate us there, and we can say save this statement, and I'm going to say, maybe I'll give it a default just so it can present the options, yes or no, but I'm going to say yes. Okay. Now I want to locate search. I'm going to deliberately make an error here. I'm going to say locate I don't exist. So hopefully this will prompt me, this will give me the error. and then say, do you want to save this statement anyway? And I can say no. So I'm going to say locate I don't exist. This will take a minute, right? I think that, I can't remember the total we do, right? Because we do sort of like a no wait, and then a 2-second wait, and then a 5-second wait, and then yeah, so the statement locate I don't exist resulted in an error. Could not locate the element. Save this statement anyway. I'm going to say no. And then I'm going to say locate search and type implementing a DSL for UI testing. Let's see if our videos show up without Rust as the keyword. Okay, so that works. Save this statement. Yep. And then I'm going to. Oh, what was the ID? Legacy search, something like that. If we inspect it, it's search icon legacy. Great. So I'm going to say locate search icon legacy and click. Great, and look, our videos are still showing up even though we didn't put Rust in the keyword. That's nice. Yeah, let's save this statement. And then I'm going to exit, and that should cause us to break the loop. And now it's going to say, save this test run as a Schnauzer UI script. I'm going to say yeah. Okay, so now, yeah, in the directory we were running in, which is our working directory, you can see we have this test.sui file was created. And it saved our Schnauzer UI script as one long command. We need to add new lines, but we're doing all right? So you can see we have the URL command here, and then we have the locate search and type all that, and then we have the locate search icon legacy and click. And you notice it didn't save our error statement. Great. So now we have sort of REPL driven development where we can go statement by statement and save to a file. Cool. I want to do a few things. Let's see here. 1 hour and 2 minutes. Wow. We're making great progress on this. Let's say delete, recycle bin. I want to use the output path if it's provided. In this case, we'll sort of be expecting a file name rather than a directory name. So we'll have to do some documentation on that to say if you're running in the REPL, give it a file name. And let's do this. I want to prompt default on this just so that people know that the options are yes, no. So prompt default. And then you give it a default, right? So I'm going to prompt default there, and the default is going to be true. Yes, I want to save it. And then I'm going to prompt default here, and the default is going to be true. No, actually, I'm here, so we're saying whether or not we want to save an error statement, and I'm going to say the default is false. The default is we don't want to record that error statement, because really, if we record the error statement, then we're kind of done with our test. Because we want to have a single test run that's going to display that error, and then we'll move on. And here, I'm going to say prompt default, and I want the default to be true, right? So if everything was okay, then I do want to save the statement by default. Now let's look at how we save the script. are really how we push to the string buffer. So after all of these, after we push the statement to the buffer, we almost certainly want to push a new line character, right? And I would actually argue the only time we don't want to push another new line character is when we have comments. So, right, you can imagine a comment being directly over a command, but separation between commands, you kind of want 2 lines between there. Just the way our language works. Like if you look at the way we've been writing our scripts, right, comments are sort of on top, but there's white space between there. So I think, in where was it? Oh, in CLI, right? I think in here, we're going to probably want to do this twice actually. And here, I want to do this twice. And then the idea is that let's actually get this out, and we'll say if let statement, and there's a comment statement, right? Equals statement, right? So let's import this. Right, so can I do not equals here and basically say, yeah, it's got expected equals. So this is sort of destructuring syntax, right? So I'm going to say if we can destructure the statement as a comment statement, then we're not going to push a second new line. But otherwise, we are going to push a second new line, right? I know that's sort of weird, but can I do that? No. I guess I could do it better with a match statement. Yeah, let's do this with a match statement. That's going to be a lot more clear. So I'm going to say match statement, and let's do statement comment, and I don't really care what's in the comment, right? I just want to make sure I don't do anything. And then if it's any other kind of statement, then I want to push another new line, right? And let's do this here as well. Comment really shouldn't produce an error, but nonetheless, you can, I guess you can see someone adding that. I don't know. I think adding a statement that is a comment which produces an error is sort of bad, but you know, people are allowed to do what they want to do. Okay. Yeah, so let's try running it with an output file path this time and see how that goes. I'm going to say -o /. Now we may fail to write to it. It may be like this file doesn't exist or something like that, or this directory doesn't exist. In fact, let's take care of that before we run it. So right here we're writing to the file, right? We're writing the buffer to the file. Up here, we do a sort of check here. Let's see, where was it? string split. Okay, here we go. Create the appropriate directory for logging if it doesn't exist. So before we log anything, we want to create a directory if it doesn't exist. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say that, but rather I'm going to say output. Let's do this. If let's output path equal output file path. And what we want to do is we want to create the directories for output path dot split c equals that or that, dot last dot unwrap. No, everything but dot filter gosh, we got to do this whole thing. We really need to do some refactoring and extract this out into a method. I don't know. Maybe let's try it without this. Let's see how it goes. Maybe I'm doing work I don't have to do. One moment. I'm going to pause and respond to this. Sorry about that. I not so infrequently combine PDFs for my older coworkers. Okay. Let's jump back in. What were we doing? We were writing to a file. We were going to run this with an output path and see how it went. I'm going to see what happens if we give it an output path that maybe the directory doesn't exist. First, we'll try it with, let's call it mytest.sui. Right, so the idea here is just we're still going to be producing it in our working directory. It's just that we're naming it something different. Okay, so there's our test browser to work with. While we're doing this, we'll sort of check that our spacing semantics are working, and we'll get to see that we have prompt suggestions again. So let's go here, right? So let's say URL, let's do a comment. Let's do a comment that says navigate to YouTube. Yes, and so you can see the default for this is yes, so I should just be able to press enter. And then I'm going to say URL https youtube.com. Great, we navigated to YouTube. Yep, save it. And then let's say, let's add a comment that says locate, or let's say type into the search bar. And we want to save that. And then we're going to say locate, and we're just going to go by the placeholder text search and type search input text. Yeah, See what videos come up there. So that worked, so we can save the statement. And then we're going to, let's do another comment that says click the search button. Ooh. Click the search button. And then we're going to say locate, and what the heck was it? Legacy search icon? Search legacy icon? This will be a great way to test if it's an error. Let's try legacy search icon and click. Alright, so that's presumably going to error out. Alright, so we got an error. The statement locates legacy search icon and click resulted in an error, could not locate the element. Save the statement anyway, so you can see now the default is to not save the statement. That's why the N is capital instead of the Y. So yeah, let's not save it. And let's do the same thing again. Locate search legacy icon. Is that it? And click. Nope, that one's gonna quit too. Okay. Let's inspect the element. What are you called? It's called search icon legacy. Okay, so don't add this, just to show you can type the letter, but you know. So let's locate search icon legacy and click, and that worked. And so yes, we'll save the statement. And then let's exit. And so save this. Yep, we're going to save it. And then if we look in our working directory, you see we have a my test, and you can see our spacing syntax, our sort of spacing semantics are working. So the comments don't get an extra space after them, but the rest of the statements do. Awesome. I think that's nice and organized. Great, and it's called my test. Okay, let's try inside a directory, and I'm just going to do a single statement and save it, and we'll say, oh gosh, I don't know, my dir my test2 SUI. Right, so this will run a REPL. We've got our little browser here. I actually don't care what we do in this, so we'll do URL https google.com. Right, so looks like that statement succeeded, right? Because we're on Google. So we'll just say, yeah, save the statement, and then exit. And then, yeah, save it to a schnauzer UI file, and here we go. The system cannot find the path specified. Okay, let's do our little... Do we want to do a walking directory thing? I don't think we do. I don't think we want to create possibly create a directory. Well, yeah, we do. Let's do it. Okay, so up here we have the creator thing going on. Let's make that work in here. we're going to create the directory, and what we're going to do is we're going to take there's a place where we do this. It's here, right? This is where we get the len, right? And then so we get the length of the output file path. But what we mean by the length is we're gonna for option. We need to do this inside of if let sum op equal output file path. And really we can do that. We'll call this op. And then instead of unwrapping here, instead of unwrapping, we can just say else, and then this whole write statement can come in here. This is the ugliest looking code. We're going to have a fun time refactoring this. Great. Okay, so we've got the length, meaning we split sort of how many directories we're going through. And now we're going to use that to sort of remove the last one, right? So this is current path by splitting off the file name. And really, it would have taken just as much time to extract it to a function. But you know, live and learn. Okay, so now presumably we have the path, and we want to create the directory for that path. And then we can do this write statement to the output path, because we've created the directories for it. And down here we can just, since we know that output file path is none, we can just do /test.sui. Great. Okay, so now when we run the exact same thing, so here's our browser to work in. And we'll do a sort of full, well, I won't do a full demo here, but we'll do one right after this. I'm going to say go to URL https google.com, right? Save the statement, and then I'm actually going to quit, or what is it, exit. Great. Yeah, save it. And this time it did not freak out. And it says my test. Oh, here we go. So this is from the last one, right? This is from the last time we ran this. But you can see up here, it created a directory called mydir, and then inside that directory, it created a script called mytest2, and that's the only command we executed just now, is the URL command. So that's working. So we have we have a working REPL. Wow, awesome. Let's sort of get an idea for how this works. So basically the idea is this. You can record a test, right? So let's say I'm going to save it as, I'm going to make a directory called example REPL script, right? And then inside that directory, I'm going to have a script called test.sui. So here, we're running the REPL, and it's going to launch a browser for us. Now what we can do, we can take that browser and we can go through the steps of our test, right? So we can say, okay, navigate to YouTube. And we'll save the comment. And we'll say URL, https, youtube.com. And that'll execute, and it executed successfully, so we'll save the statement. And then we'll say, let's add another comment that says, type into the search bar and then we'll say locate, and we can just locate it by that placeholder text and type test1. Great, that works. So we'll save the statement. And then we'll add another comment, which is going to be click the search button. Great. And then we're going to actually click that search button. So let's locate, oh gosh, search icon legacy. I think that's it. And click. Great. Okay, so we're going to save that statement. And then let's go home. Right? Might as well. Let's say, it might be an image, but I bet it's not. Locate home and click. Yeah. Okay. Save this statement, and you know what? Let's not save that statement because I forgot to put a comment. So I'm going to say, nah, I'm not going to save the statement. And I'm just going to click the search button again to get where we were. So I'm going to say locate search icon. And really you could do this in the browser. Actually, if you were doing REPL-driven development, you could say, hey, I didn't mean to do that. Let's go back, right? That's probably more likely what you'd do. And then I'm going to say this time I'm going to remember to put a comment. I'm going to add a comment, which is click the home button. It may be hard to see on the screen, but YouTube has these little icons on the side, and the text right there says home. That's what it's finding. So I'm going to say click the home button, and yep, we're going to save that. And now this time I'm going to say locate home and click. And element located home, could not locate the element. You located it a moment ago. What's your problem now? Save this statement. Anyway, no. let's refresh. Right? And then no, don't save that. And now locate home, right? The text is home, and click. There we go. Clicked it that time. I think because I navigated, maybe the element became stale. We'll work on stuff like that. We'll work on requerying if the element is stale and whatnot. Save the statement, yeah. And then I'm done, so I'm going to exit. Yeah, save it to the script. And then if we look at right, if we look at our file in example REPL script, we have this test file, and it navigates to YouTube. It locates search and types in test1. It locates the search icon and clicks it, and then it clicks the home button again. And now what I can do is, using the same executable, instead of doing REPL, I can do well, really, I could do two things. I could pass the file path and say and give it example REPL script / test.sui, or I could pass it the directory and it would just run all the scripts in the directory. I'm going to do file path, since you're likely going to want to rerun the one script you just made. So now anytime I want to run the script, I can just run it. So it's / example REPL script tests SUI, right? And now when I run it, it's going to bring up the browser. Navigate to YouTube, type in, click home, and then if you look at the test log, looks like everything was successful. So we have the sort of the main things we need for REPL-driven development. That's freaking awesome. This was a good video. I will see you next time for likely refactoring and additions to the CLI, and adding some new commands, some new functionality to our little language. So, see you then.